Okay, guys, for this year's final exam in graphic design, we are working on creating corresponding band-aids to match our band-aid boxes. So from the picture you can see here, I took a photo of some prior student examples and the three bandages from each box that correspond to them. Um, your goal is to design the outside of the bandage. So this is the part that's like not sticky and that you see if you were to look at your skin. So you'll notice that there's some similarities and some differences here. For one thing, I want to go over, I'm not requiring you this year to print them or cut them. I think we're short on time. So this year they did print and cut them, but for our class year this year, we're not going to do that. Also, keep in mind that we're going to have a reflection on the day of the final exam as well. So we're starting all of this the day before, a few days before exams, and then we'll work on it into the exam period and finish it with a reflection on the exam period. So let's talk about what I'm looking for and what's going to earn you a really good grade. So I have a picture of like a general bandage with like the outside here. So what I'm looking for is the physical bandage shape itself, and I'm open to pretty much any shape. As you can tell, and what other students did is they used some traditional band kind of shapes. Some went with that like circle sort of shape, and some went totally custom to something that matches their box. So I'm open to all of those. You can have a combination, you could choose all of the same shape. It's up to you as long as your three band-aids are somehow different in design. You'll notice on the outside, you also see like the shadow for the gauze. So the gauze is that little like white pad in the middle where that like cushions your wound. So we're not going to see the white of the gauze, but we see just like a little bit of a shadow of it. So I'll explain how we'll make that in Illustrator later. So we need those two parts for our Band-Aid design. Let's talk about the project outline a little bit for this project. So number one, your Band-Aids need to make sure they fit inside of the box. So our box is 2.5 by 4 inches. So that makes them pretty small, which is good. Okay. So what I'm looking for is this. Your Band-Aids have to relate to your box using similar colors, shapes, and themes. What's really helpful is you could open your document from before and you can just use some of the images you already made. So feel free to copy the same colors and any kind of drawings you made. That's absolutely fine. Okay. And you can use unique shapes. You don't have to, but it's up to you. So if you had an ice cream themed bandage and you want to use a popsicle shaped band-aid for your box, go for it. Okay. You have to include the 3D effect of the gauze, which I will talk about in a little bit. Okay. So our plan is to create 3 different Band-Aids in Adobe Illustrator that relate to your Band-Aid. We talked about the different shapes. We talked about having gauze on them and that they have to fit into the box. Also, please keep in mind that for this assignment, this is a final exam project. So I'm only accepting work that's completed in class. Anything completed outside of class won't be accepted. So at this point, you have your grading at the bottom, which you can go over and read. It's pretty much all the same basic things we usually do. The overall design, how well it connects to the theme of your box, your overall shapes and sizes you chose that they could, like, in theory, possibly work. And then 20 points will be a very simple reflection of the project. Okay. So let's go back to the pictures for a moment. And I want to zoom in on some of the individual boxes. So you'll notice it may be tricky from the angle of the photo, but they're all going to fit inside the box. And in this case, with the bunny theme, all of these have a bunny on it, which relate to the bunny aid. And pretty much all of these colors are found in the design of the box. Same with the font as well. Perhaps they copied the bunny from here and the carrot as well, which probably saved them a ton of time. Same with the Band-Aid ice cream. They definitely use some of the shapes that were here before, like in the logo and in the design on here. So that could save you some time too. Now you'll notice, like we'll talk about the gauze now. That little shadow for the gauze, it's pretty simple. It's usually like a rectangle or a rounded rectangle, and it tends just to be a little bit darker just to show the shadow of it popping out. This case, they decided to go lighter, and I was fine with that too. But there's a lot of different ways you can approach it, and I have no issue if you just end up copying and pasting some of your images from your former Band-Aid box project, resize it, and add the gauze. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's talk about creating our bandages from designs on our current Band-Aid box. So I opened my Band-Aid box document and I'm going to turn one of my fruits into one of my bandages. Number one, let's start with my ruler. I'm going to use Control R to make my ruler appear. And I'm going to right click on it and change it to inches. I think I'm going to work on the banana as my first bandage. I'm going to make it like the actual shape of the banana. So number one, let me just unlock all of my layers just to make sure I'm selecting what I want. I'm going to hold my shift key to make sure I select that little brown portion too. So let's copy it by using Control C. I'm going to create a new document. Like I said before, your bandages have to be 2.5 by 4 inches. And there's this cool function here that says artboard. So basically it's going to give you like 3 sheets of paper in one screen. And I'm going to hit create. Okay. So what's cool here is this is basically like the size of each panel of your Band-Aid box. You need your Band-Aids to fit inside of these boxes. That's part of our grade. I'll hit Control R again so I have my ruler. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that banana. And in this case, maybe I'll even make it like vertical. Like, let me blow it up first and then I'll make it vertical. And I'm going to rotate it. Okay, a little too big, so let me shrink it down. All right, not bad. So I'm gonna make that one of my bandages. The only thing I'm missing is I need like the little gauze. So like we talked about before, depending on your shape, I recommend either like a rectangle or a rounded rectangle. I would probably use the ellipse circle if it was like a round element. And for now, I'm just gonna make it this black and white shape. I think I'm gonna keep that rounded element. I don't recommend keeping a stroke on it. It doesn't help it make look realistic. But what I want to do is pick something similar to that yellow. So I can use my eyedropper here. And I can pick up that exact yellow, which is nice. But I'm going to go a little bit like darker in this sense. And I'm going this way. It's a little bit more gray. So something like that's going to give you a way better appearance. And I'm going to try and center it here as best I can. Leave a little bit of breathing room for that gauze because usually there's still a little bit of that stickiness around it. Cool. That one looks pretty good. All right, I've got one more step to make this look just a little bit more advanced. What I'm going to do is make sure my rounded rectangle gauze is still selected. Effect, stylize, drop shadow. You're probably going to see a different number that's a little bit funky. And I bring both of these down, this X offset and this Y offset. I bring them down to 0. Yours will probably look something like that is what I'm guessing. Okay. I like to bring it down to like 0. So that way the blur is still on like my banana Band-Aid shape. Make sure preview is selected so I could see it. When I press OK and I click off of it, you just get that little shadow around it and it makes it look really professional. So that's usually one of the easier ways to make our banana shape. And if you wanted to draw something by hand, for example, like you want to make like a physical, let's say a traditional Band-Aid shape, you can go in and I either use my rounded rectangle tool or I use like my ellipse tool and put those together. I've had students make them like this. If you want those corners to change, you can hold down your down key or in my up key in this case, and you can see how the corners change. Sometimes you'll notice like once you get to a certain point, they don't change very much. So you may have to sit there and get all the way back to like where it says R, where it's almost 0. I like it more rounded, so I think I'm going to go with that. So that's one way to make my Band-Aid shape. And then same story as to go in and make my gauze, the same idea. Perhaps instead of just making this a plain yellow one, maybe I want to have like multiple prints on here. So maybe I'm going to put like a few fruits on here. I'm going to put like an orange. There we go. Selected all that. Copy it. Paste it. Rotate it a little bit. Add a little bit of interest. Maybe I'm going to just put a bunch of oranges on here. I'm going to Alt-click, have a bunch of oranges, rotate them. And then I can do the same effect with the gauze like I talked about before. What I recommend, and it tends to be easier, is I try not to have anything like overlapping on the gauze because it's difficult when you have a design hanging on it. So I'd probably push these guys up a little bit more and then make my design work a little bit differently in that sense. So I'll make a little bit more room. So now I could go in and add my darker gauze and my drop shadow, and then I should be pretty much good to go. All right, I think I'll use a rounded rectangle again. Yeah, I'm not wild about that shape, so I'm going to hit my down key. There we go. Make the gauze a little bit smaller like that. Definitely not down with the brown, so let's use that eyedropper. Make it yellow again. And then I'm going to go in and sort of adjust it and make it a little bit more gray first. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to add my drop shadow. I'm going to go to Effect, Stylize, Drop Shadow. Should be set to 0 at this point, and then we're pretty much good to go.